Governor Ron DeSantis' campaign is fighting to regain its footing. According to the New York Times, the Florida governor's team is undergoing change to become a, quote, leaner, meaner campaign machine after a series of missteps have panicked donors and allies.
In fact, in a recent closed-door meeting, DeSantis' team acknowledged their mistakes to donors. Now, according to Politico, one Florida-based lobbyist and fundraiser at the event urged those worried to just, quote, let Ron be Ron. So, yes, it's not been going as well as hoped for the DeSantis folks. There have been some very much perceived missteps. He's running very much to Trump's right on sort of culture, wokeness stuff, and with the idea that that's the right thing to do in the primary, but that has yet to have much of an impact on his poll numbers. I think so far DeSantis was having a bit of a moment when Trump was more out of the spotlight, or a little bit of post-midterm fatigue with Trump's candidates, his Republican kind of handpicked people in Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, all losing. I think was getting the message across that Trump's influence is not good for electing Republicans. But then with the indictments, the spotlight returned to Trump. He kind of rebounded a little bit. DeSantis is flailing. His numbers in Iowa and New Hampshire and South Carolina are terrible. He's slipped a little bit. Ramaswamy is coming up. Nikki Haley in South Carolina specifically. At least before he could make the argument that he's the only real alternative to Trump. And I think that's still probably true because he has more support than everybody else put together nationally. But if you go state by state, again, like Haley is getting closer in South Carolina, Ramaswamy's coming along. I don't really expect any of them to mount serious challenges to Donald Trump, but it's not looking like Ron DeSantis is mounting a serious challenge either at this point.
Right, yeah, that one poll last week showed DeSantis at 12% and Ramaswamy at 12%, which was shocking, I think, to many people. There's a lot that can go on, I think, with polling, though. The stats show that, you're calculating statistical significance with a power value of, 95%. You want this 0.05% p-value, which means that it's very unlikely you're polling's the result of random sampling. That small, tiny fraction, you could still fall in there and be completely not capturing the reality of what the population that you're trying to poll believes. That could happen. But also the way they ask questions about candidates and the order of candidates' names can affect polling. So I don't know if we should read too much into that and think Ramaswamy is now a front runner. DeSantis, however, I think is falling in the polls for a good reason. I don't think him and Trump are running on the same platform anymore. I think you're right that he has said, all right, there's not a lot of room in this political field. And where I see a little bit of room is potentially to the right of Donald Trump. Is that a good place to go? I don't think so. I don't even think he's advocating for his true beliefs when he's to the right of Trump, because a lot of it's ridiculous. A lot of it is stuff that I think would make donors quite angry, picking fights with Disney and picking fights with Anheuser-Busch in the direction of questioning corporate personhood. Citizens United could be a ruling that's challenged ultimately in the Supreme Court by one of DeSantis's cases by saying these corporations shouldn't be expressing political views. That affects campaign donations and PACs. So I think he's making his donors mad for more reasons than just slipping in the polls.
Yeah, the category of issues where I think he could get to Trump's right and it would help him make a compelling case in the primary was clearly COVID stuff, where Trump's proximity to Fauci by virtue of having been in office when he handed over the entire federal response to this now deeply polarizing and hopefully even from the liberal perspective becoming increasingly problematic person. Attacking Trump for that, showing Florida's perceived to have had the way he handled it looks good, has aged well, actually, even as I think as probably the average voter's attitudes toward the COVID response has, I think, moved a little rightward over time, given, now widespread skepticism or confusion about how helpful any of the really, really hardcore intervention requirements were. Skepticism, I think a greater understanding the vaccines didn't do as much as was promised. So the Biden approach to require them, or maybe even the Trump approach to go all in on them. You can make that criticism and not be alienating people if outside the Republican coalition as much. I think all of that's where he let Ron be Ron on all that stuff. But and wokeness is in fact annoying to most people, I think. So you can complain about it a little bit, or you can complain about the elimination of women's sports as a category or something. But you're right that going all in on war with Disney or war with whatever over wokeness ends up being a little limiting in that then it does start to put you in conflict with other conservative values, like why should the government be telling these companies what to do? That's actually a pretty hardcore conservative value, and then one where Trump and even Pence and other people and Christie are all saying, why are you doing this?
Right.
And probably a lot of voters are too.
DeSantis and Trump fighting for the Republican voters reminds me of this economic concept, Nash Equilibrium, right? Which is kind of game theory more than economics.
From Beautiful Mind.
It
requires you to have it's right, John Nash, right? That's what the movie's about.
I'm not sure. Well, Nash Equilibrium's about competition in a market.
That's totally what Beautiful Mind is about.
Is that? No?
Right, you're too young to have seen this movie, unfortunately. But.
Well, that sounds lovely. But yeah, basically you have a beach, you have two people selling ice cream, they start on opposite ends of the beach, and then one tries to capture more people, so they move closer, and then eventually they're both in the middle, capturing all of the people on either side.
In the movie, they describe it as all the dudes in a bar trying to date the most attractive girl, when they should date try to go after the second and third, I don't know, something like that.
And in this case, DeSantis and Trump are the beautiful girls, or
they're the bells of the ball.
They're the guys trying to get the beautiful girls. I'm not sure how that analogy fits, but basically, this assumes you have the same product. And I think DeSantis and Trump are selling different kinds of ice cream. Basically, you have both of them with a similar policy platform and political views. The main difference I would draw is that simply Trump is funny, and Trump doesn't play by the rules. DeSantis, not funny, plays by the rules. And so Trump has a clear advantage. Trump is going to be able to sell more ice cream to the Republican voters. I really think the way that they're edging towards each other has allowed them to have this contrast of Trump gets to make funny comments about how he doesn't like DeSantis all of the time, calling him DeSanctimonious, calling him names, poking fun at him in every possible way, telling him he needs a personality transplant, but unfortunately they don't have that surgery yet. It's funny.
And if they did, conservatives would try to ban it.
And DeSantis playing by the rules of this political game allows the base of voters to appreciate Trump as an outsider a little bit more.
Yeah. DeSantis needs a big win, frankly, in one of these early states, Iowa, New Hampshire, et cetera, to reset the narrative. To force a big win would force the media, all media, mainstream media, conservative media, to treat him as a more legitimate competitor to Trump, and that would increase his name recognition, and then that would help him in subsequent states, and you might, theoretically, you could see these numbers equalize a little bit. That's what he needs to happen, but I'm looking at, the polling right now does not suggest that's likely to happen. Obviously, we could have big surprises, big upsets. campaigns have rebounded from early stumbles. We went with the McCain campaign is a famous example. In 2008, John McCain was one of many people running for the Republican nomination, was not at all a front runner. There was a lot being written about how his campaign was not going well, and then he had a surprise victory in New Hampshire that then he was the front runner from then out. Now, he wasn't up against a former president with the same letter next to his name who is extremely popular among the primary voters. So it's a more difficult task before DeSantis, given that Trump will just not go away. And honestly, most Republicans seem to not really want him to go away. And even those who do want him to go away are not going to admit that out loud or lift a finger to help it happen, which suggests that he'll probably just be around for as long as he wants to be.
I can see DeSantis doing well in a state like New Hampshire, where you have a lot of libertarians. You have a lot of people who identify as independents and really like that kind of libertarian way of thinking. I don't know if DeSantis would capture them with his recent, attack on Disney and Anheuser-Busch.
I can't speak for all libertarians, but I think Republican voting inclined libertarians might be just as split Well, they probably like some of what Ramaswamy has to say. They're again on COVID, love DeSantis and his policies. But on foreign policy, Trump is the more kind of principled. What the F are we even doing in Ukraine and elsewhere kind of. So I think there might be just as much of a split there as anywhere else. But you're right that New Hampshire has an independent, iconoclastic streak that maybe benefits DeSantis, but maybe it just doesn't.
And I think he'll have a hard time in Iowa because he just had Farmers Insurance leave the state in Florida, and he's saying, let's make America Florida. That doesn't bode well for Iowa, where so much of the economy depends on farming. So we'll see what happens, and we'll see what a leaner, meaner campaign machine really means. More rising after this.